Welcome back to Propology 101, and today we're going to talk about the Hoth A280, the Rebel Trooper rifle. This guy right here. Now, this is my unfinished project that's been on the shelf for probably almost a decade. But anyway, let's talk about it. Now, the Hoth A280 is based on the German machine gun from World War II. It's the STG-44, or also known as the Sturmgewehr. Now, they didn't use any real, they used a real one as a master and mocked it up and then cast it in fiberglass. Just like we talked about for other blasters in Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back was the first time we see mass production, I would say, of props for stormtroopers, for rebel troopers. There's a lot of fiberglass blasters made, from pistols to DH-17s, E-11s, and of course, the A280 falls into that also. The A280 is a casting, a fiberglass casting. So let's talk about what they did to the main body of the blaster to make it the A280. Well, first thing they did is remove the buttstock and replaced it with a dowel rod with a buttstock, a wooden buttstock attached to it. They also mounted a pump shotgun foregrip to the front of it here, and they removed this area right here. There used to be a little rod with a little ball on top, and it was part of this piece. This is the gas block plug. You remove this, and that rod comes with it, obviously, and this is how you would clean out the gas system for the gun. So this little rod, this is kind of an interesting thing. It's called a hanging rod, and this is something that's very common with especially old school infantry rifles. This rod is so you could take this one and another one and link them together, and they could stand up. And and you'll see in like old war movies or everything, you'll see in the camp, you'll see rifles stacked up like this in little circles. That's what that little rod is for. And this one had it. Many infantry weapons back then and leading up to this time period had these. It's to keep the gun out of the mud is really what it's for. Moving on, there is a scope. The blaster has a scope we're already very familiar with, and that is the single point scope. Now, the single point scope we've seen in other blasters, we've seen the glass part or the clear lens broken off. And it's kind of interesting. They built a whole custom front end of unknown parts. It's made of multiple pieces, but we don't know what they are. It's probably just a bunch of found stuff that they cobbled together to make the front of this scope, but the rear of it is a single point scope, and it uses a 1-inch Weaver scope ring in the same style scope ring used on the A&H DH-17, and how they mounted it was they clamped the scope right to the rear sight of the original gun. And you can still see the sight adjuster and the rear sight underneath the scope. And then this area was filled in to accommodate the front of the custom part of the front of the scope. That scope was also cast onto the blaster. So when the blaster was cast in fiberglass, it had the foregrip and it also had the scope already on it. Also, it had all the greeblies, and the greeblies, we don't get a very good shot of the left. Matter of fact, we don't have any pictures of the left side of this blaster. We only have pictures of the right. But in my mind, it makes sense that all the greeblies on the right side have been mirrored on the left side. And I think that's probably what actually happened. Starting out for greeblies, right here on the back, there is the motor coil cover, part number 98 from the Revell Visible Engine Kit. And sitting right here in the same way they're put together on the Hoth DL-44 are two piston halves butted up together, and that's part numbers 67 and 68, and those are also from the Revell Visible Engine Kit. Like I said, I think they're probably mirrored on the left side also. One of the difficult parts of this blaster, like I said before, there's very few really good pictures of this. When you can find production photos, like they do photos to show how the guns or the blasters are mocked up, there's tons of production photos, but none have really come out into the world of this blaster. And odds are there's more greeblies on it than we're currently aware of, but they're hard to find. And the last greebly, which is also cast onto the blaster, is a cylindrical greebly. It sits right here up on top in the rear of the blaster. We don't know what this is. It's probably also another found part, but that, as far to our knowledge right now, is what makes up an A280. All right, and before we leave, I'm just gonna rant for one moment. This has always been the A280. It's always going to be the A280 to me. There's two versions of the A280 from the original trilogy. That is the A280 Hoth and the A280 Endor. This is the A280 Hoth. And I don't know when this happened. I think maybe it happened sometime around Rogue One, but people started referring to this as the A195 instead of the A280. If you Google this, you can Google this blaster as an A280 or the A195. It's still always going to be the A280 to me. I don't know why this happens sometimes. Sometimes it makes sense, but this has been in the A280 forever. Why change it? Who cares? You know what I'm saying? You know, I'd almost be better off if you just put a letter at the end of it and call it the A280C or the A280A. Actually, A280A is kind of cool. I would rather it be like that. They've never done that to the DL44. You don't see the DL44 or the DL44A or the DL44C or B or whatever. We don't see that. But this is the A280 Hoth. That's good enough for me. I think that should be good enough for everybody else. Anyway, I'm done with my rant. Join us next time we pull out another prop, tear it down, and see what it's made of.